Hello and welcome back to Discover Inclusion's YouTube channel. Today we are looking at spoon theory and how it affects masking in neurodivergent people. Spoon theory was created by a woman called Christine Miserandino. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. She was trying to explain how living with lupus, a chronic illness, affected her in her everyday life with a friend while sat at a diner. To do this, she gathered all the spoons around her and gave them to a friend, and she asked them to count them out. Her friend counted 12. This is when her story and her analogy began. So let's try and recreate this from a neurodivergent perspective. Let's start the day with 12 spoons. It's going to take you 1 spoon to get up, another spoon to get dressed, a spoon to eat your breakfast, and maybe 2 spoons to shower. So that's 5 spoons gone already, and you've not even left the house. The reality is when you're living with a chronic illness or living as a neurodivergent person, you find that you have to count your spoons and be aware of how many spoons you have at the start of each day and how you can use them to maximise what you get to achieve in a day. Whether this is working out whether to go out with friends or to do your household chores, it's not just about the time in a day, it's about how much energy and how many spoons you have left to give. For a neurodivergent person, this often is seen as different spoons for different activities. So you may have 4 spoons available for physical activity, but only 1 spoon for social interaction. So when I leave the house, I've only got 1 spoon available for social interaction, so maybe that's my lunch break. But I've got 4 spoons for physical activity, so I'm able to go for a run, or I'm able to go and play on a trampoline with a child I'm working with. But when I get home, I've only got those physical activity spoons left. My social interaction is gone. So it can seem quite selfish when you then go and do something where you've got spoons left. Say physical activity. So I would go and do some skipping outside as opposed to sitting down and having a conversation with my partner, because at that point I don't have any social interaction spoons left. When you're a typical person, you're generally starting the day with what feels like infinite spoons. You don't have to calculate how much energy you're going to require for different activities. Your body just naturally has the energy to achieve what you need to throughout the day. So often neurodivergent people will do something called masking. The idea of masking is that you pretend to be what everybody else considers normal. So for me, this is I don't fidget as much, I will stim less, I will try and have conversations in a way that people see as socially acceptable. And I try and bring my whole personality into a box of what people see as acceptable. The problem with masking is it takes a lot of energy. So instead of starting the day with my normal 12 spoons, I pretend that I'm starting with infinite spoons as a neurotypical person might. So I go out into the day and I act as a neurotypical person would, but in reality, I only have those 12 spoons. So what happens is I start taking spoons from the days ahead of me. If it usually in a day, I would only use 12 spoons. When I'm masking, I might use 20 spoons, which is used 8 spoons of my next day's supply. So I'm starting tomorrow with only 4 spoons of energy. However, in a lot of cases, people are masking on a constant basis, sometimes at home, but predominantly when they go to school or when they go to work. So we're doing day after day after day, masking and borrowing spoons from the future. But in reality, we're borrowing spoons from so far in the future that it's no longer beneficial. We can no longer recover from the spoons that we've borrowed. In this case, we start to see meltdowns and shutdowns and other behaviours that often feel uncontrollable. So if I mask for a full day, I might be able to come home, sit under my weighted blanket, have some screen time, relax and recuperate, and have the ability to start again tomorrow. But if I'm doing this day after day, I might find that I'm no longer able to keep myself at a steady and mentally healthy position. Long term, this looks like school refusal or inability to work. It might be constant meltdowns or shutdowns whenever you walk in the door from school or from work. You can find yourself lashing out at the people around you, the people that you consider safe, because you know they're not going to walk away from you just because you're upset or tired or having a meltdown from all of this overuse of borrowing spoons. This is why often with children and young people, we see them behaving at school and acting as what society would consider normal, and then they come home and they become dysregulated and they start shouting and screaming, having these meltdowns or shutting down and becoming mute. And it seems like they're acting one way at school and one way at home. The reality is that at school, they're masking, and at home, they're trying to find all of those spoons that they've lost. There's another analogy that can really help us when we're looking at neurodivergent living. There's another analogy called the fork theory that we can look at when we're discovering neurodivergent perspectives on life. The idea of the fork theory is that when something that's inconvenient or upsetting happens, it feels like a fork has been stabbed in your side. The forks can range in size from a tiny little fork up to a giant pitchfork, depending on what the situation is. And then through the day, we may be able to remove some of those forks in the same way that we may be able to recuperate and gain some of our spoons back. When we're struggling with something small, we might get a small fork in our side. For me, when I come down for breakfast in the morning, I will always have cereal. If the milk is out of date or if I've run out, that's a fork in my side. I become anxious, it upsets me and it dysregulates me because that's something I do every single morning. Now I can remove that fork because I know there's a backup of there's some kind of bread or crumpet in the fridge that I can grab and have for my breakfast, which removes that discomfort, that daily grind on my brain, convincing me that something's wrong. Now, if you imagine you go through the day and a little fork in your side might be getting hungry or needing the toilet, or a piece of clothing is itchy because of the label. We can remove some of those forks by going to the toilet, making sure we eat well. But some of them we're not able to remove, like the label. Often you won't be able to change anything about that until you get home and can get changed. We also can come across much bigger forks. If someone starts frustrating you or picking on you and pushing at those triggers that you have, or if you are in a really overwhelmingly loud and noisy environment and you can't get those sounds out of your head, that's going to be a much bigger trigger and a much bigger fork in your side that is going to be a lot harder to get rid of. One of the advantages of using these analogies of the spoon and fork theory is that we are able to gain some control over our lives and over how we feel. Obviously, this is limited because the world around us is not made for a neurodivergent brain, but we can create some element of control. For example, being able to eat something or go to the toilet when that small fork's in your side, or taking some time out to regain some spoons so you're able to carry on with your day. When you're supporting neurodivergent people, it's thinking about what things might have affected them through their day and how many spoons have they had to lose before they were able to get to the point they're at now, or how many forks in their side have they got before they're having this conversation with you. Are you able to reduce some of those stresses, give them some time to recuperate, help them deal with some of those forks and some of those problems? Not all of these things are something we can deal with immediately, but by being aware of it, we can be more accepting and more open to the people around us. If you know your child struggles with the sensory of labels, try and find clothing that doesn't have physical labels inside and just has it printed on the clothes. Or find materials that are comfier and don't have the seams that are irritating. Trying to create a safe space for these neurodivergent people in your life will make things a lot easier and will help them keep their spoons for when they really need them. I hope this video has helped you a little bit, whether it's understanding yourself and how you can maintain control over your environment and your mental health, or being able to understand somebody who is neurodivergent in the world around you. Just remember, a lot of us only have a certain amount of spoons to deal with, to cope with everyday situations, whereas many neurotypical people are starting the day with an unlimited supply. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.